from there we've evolved into a very rich curriculum which cuts across many disciplines. So you can take a major and a minor. Some of those minors are very eclectic, including things like environment and energy, or heritage management, or design thinking. And this is allowing students who join us to really shape their own education. So we have students who are studying life sciences, which is a Bachelor of Science program, but who also want to do philosophy, which is part of our Bachelor of Arts program. And this is coming not from our vision, but just the way that, provided the right stimuli, they are shaping their own stories. And that's what I wanted to say.
Thank you.
About Ahmedabad.
Thank you, Hansa.
Kapil.
Thank you, Hansa Ben. I'm sure you're getting used to being called Hansa Ben in Ahmedabad, are you?
So I think this is actually a destiny-related thing.
Is it?
Hansa is a very common name in Gujarat.
Right.
And nobody in Delhi, where I come from, had ever heard of a Hansa. Now I've landed in Gujarat, where I am Hansa Ben.
Hansa Ben is a famous character, as you would know.
Yes.
Yeah. Right. All right. Hi. I'm Kapil. I lead marketing and outreach at Bennett University. Clay asked me to give a bit of a background on how I landed in education. So, not really by choice, to be honest. Yeah. So I did my MBA somewhere in 2004. And I was clear I was not getting into sales. I mean, I could not sell anything for the life of me. So when one of the recruiters asked me, can you sell something? I said, the only thing I can sell is Reader's Digest. That's the thing I grew up with, and that's the only thing I believe in which I can sell. So I was looking for a marketing role and ended up with NIIT Limited, which was the largest IT trainer at that point of time, spent 6 years there. And I'll tell you, how did I move from being a marketing guy in education to actually an education guy being in marketing. So this was somewhere in 2008. I was looking after one product range which was meant for engineering students, their curricular support and college support and everything. So this was in Chennai, 2008. I went for a seminar, gave a talk about the program range that I used to lead. And after that, right after the program ended, one child, a 19-year-old, 20-year-old just came to me and fell on my feet. And I was like surprised. Coming down from the stage, I was surprised. I was like, ye kya ho raha hai? And he was speaking in Tamil, so I had no idea what he was saying. So I had my colleague with me, and he translated that this child came to NIT for a product that I used to look after, which was 4-month program. And after that, if you don't get a job, you get your money back. Yeah, and he said this child was in college. After that, he did not get a job. Has a widowed mother, 2 younger sisters. He's the only earning member where family had any kind of hope to kind of bring them up. And he didn't get a job after the college. So he was about to commit suicide, and his uncle gave him some money to pursue the course, and now he's got a job. And he came to know that you lead that particular program, and one of the people who are leading that program, and he just came to meet you and had no idea. I think that was the moment which turned me from a marketing guy in education to actually being an education guy who ends up kind of marketing stuff or selling these kind of courses. And after that, I've been involved with many startups. Clay told you about Shivnadar. I spent 6 years there, Shivnadar University, last almost 2 years with Bennett. So it's been an exciting journey. Coming to Bennett University, we are 3 years old. Most of you would know about it. Some of you are trying to work with us. Yeah, we're founded by the Times of India Group. Anybody who doesn't know Times of India Group, don't show me any hands. Yeah, the joke is, any guesses how old is the group by itself? Any guesses? Close, but can be closer. So we're 180 years old group. Yeah, we were founded in 1838, and then the university is 3 years old. So we call ourselves the youngest and the most expensive child of the group. Yeah, and so we essentially have 4 schools right now. We decided to play largely around professional education and employability-linked education. So we decided to start with 4 schools. Engineering was the first one to come up. And then we started with media, law, and management. So these are the 4 schools. We allow a lot of interplay between these 4 schools. So we have open electives and interdisciplinary credit structure where people can take courses from other schools, other departments, and everything. Some of the best of the brands that you would see from the Times of India Group support us. And the entire thing culminates in Bennett Hatchery. So Bennett Hatchery is our business incubation center. There's a lot of technological application that we see there, a lot of entrepreneurial applications that we see there. So many things. I'll talk about hatchery in detail because, in fact, that's where a lot of innovation is happening on campus. And that's where it all comes together. The entire ethos of campus, the learnings from every single program, they all come together as part of individual efforts or team efforts. So we kind of very proudly state and try to live by it every single day. In fact, when we crafted this sentence, we said, a 100-year-old university may not prepare you for the next 10. We do. And we debated internally, are we being too ambitious or are we being a little too, boisterous about it? And then we realized this is more or less the reality. If you leave alone, say, 10, 15 universities in the country, largely the government sector is not really geared up for the kind of world we are going to live into. And that's why we said, this is something, this may be ambitious. One, we live by it every single day. And give us another 5 years, 10 years, we'll kind of prove it right. And we said, let's put it in front of us so that we live by this particular sentence every single day. And whatever we do in the university is actually driven by this particular charter. So I'll close the introduction here. And then we'll talk about more about innovations which are happening at BU in detail later. Kanji.
And as I met Kapil when he was at Shivnada, and now Bennett, first met Kanji when she was at
Ashoka and then Kriya.
Ashoka.
So between three of us, we represent 5 universities.
Kanji.
Thank you. Thanks. Hi, I'm Kanji. And for those of you who don't know me, I've been in this industry for about 5 to 6 years. And I have a knack of picking up, startups and working my ass off to set them up. So when I actually am an illustrator by profession, or I was trained to be an illustrator, worked for almost 18 to 20 years, being in the design field. And like all of us, like all of us my age, and I've just crossed half a century, we've changed careers maybe once or twice. But students we know, or youngsters or young people now, would change up to six careers. So, I'm all the best to them, because for me too was a tough, thing to work my way around. So after my design, century or whatever my stint with the design, I remember my son went into class 11th, and he said, for 2 years, we're not going anywhere. I have to study for my competitive exams. Don't ask me to go for any family function, everything. So I said, what am I supposed to do if you're studying for 2 years? So he says, why don't you study as well? So I took up an MBA at the age of 42, and I loved it. I loved being back in college, behaving like a 25-year-old again. And I aced every exam, topped the university. I was so thrilled to do that. And somewhere along the way, I started promoting the university that I was studying at. And that gave me, how exciting this field was. I applied to Ashoka, which was just a project at that time. And I joined them and very quickly rose up the ranks and became the director. I was there with them as the director for almost 3 years before I found Kriya and got excited about Kriya and moved down south. Bag and baggage. And everyone asks me, how does a North Indian like you move all the way to Chennai? But believe me, it's been a fantastic journey. I've loved it so much. We just welcomed our first cohort of students for the undergraduate, about 115 students. They're amazing kids, handpicked out of 1,100 applications, and from all across the world. Sorry, not the world right now, the country, about 18 to 19 states represented there. So I think these have been really exciting times for me to see, 2 fantastic universities, come and really take the country by storm. And they're both doing great. And a lot of us from Ashoka, like Vineet said yesterday, we are now moving out of the Ashoka team and helping set up newer organizations. And I'm really proud of my team, which has moved on to now be a part of many others. And I see Ankur sitting here. And he himself has many, many years in this industry, maybe more than me. But yes, we had this opportunity to work together. So Kriya is, again, it's a liberal arts and sciences university. We are very proud of pioneering something which is known as interwoven learning. So interwoven learning is basically interdisciplinary, but a higher notch. So when I say that, I really mean that not only do we introduce, we reintroduce, we affirm, we reaffirm whatever we want our students to actually go out with. So whether it's ethics, whether it's strong foundations in data statistics, whether it is being computer savvy, whether it is design thinking, problem solving, everything is introduced to them day one, and it keeps coming back into every classroom. And that also goes for different disciplines. They come together, they go apart, move back together again, over and over again. So I think that creates a kind of a weave pattern, which is so interesting for the students to really encounter and engage with.
Thank you.
So, thanks.
So those are our introductions, and I do want to give a quick contextual view of the Indian Global Higher Ed Alliance. This is something that the College Board has participated in. We're particularly proud of, as I said. It works to build community among these universities, are 30 plus in India, plus a group of around 8 universities from outside the India that wants to learn from and engage with this group. It's about sharing best practices, as well as developing concrete actions toward the redesign and reform within the Indian context so that it has impact on the globe. How many of you represent institutions that are already part of the Alliance? Okay, great. And for those who are not, we would love for you to consider being part of the Alliance. Within Big Future, we also promote universities in India. And you don't have to be part of the Alliance to be promoted within Big Future and be alongside peers from the US, Canada, the UK, Australia, Singapore, and so forth. So this is Ahmedabad's Big Future site. You probably saw that building earlier. And then have Bennett here. And then these are our members of the current members of the Alliance. So just over 30 members based in India. Flame, Ashoka, OP Jindal, Ajam Prinji, and VIT, Manipal, great group of universities. And the affiliate members include Cambridge, MIT, Columbia, Pomona, Purdue, McGill, Melbourne, University of Hong Kong, HKU, and Yale in US. More information can be found at this link here. And then we invite you to participate in our October 14th forum, starting at 9 in Delhi. This is an event not unlike this one. It'll be a bit more intimate, a few hundred people, combining school leaders and representatives from all of the universities I just listed. I'm going to skip over these slides. This was some data that we were seeing in student mobility and SAT test taking from India. But I want to go right into the examples of innovation. And Hansa, you will start with that. So about 8 minutes.
So, as I mentioned, we see ourselves as 10 years old, but very, very young. And these 10 years have really gone towards building schools, curricula, faculty across different areas. So, as I said, we had our roots in interdisciplinarity, but to really take it to its highest level, we felt that we had to have multiple programs, multiple schools. So I'm going to stop here and just make one point. The term liberal arts has many meanings in India. Firstly, liberal arts is also the social sciences. Many universities, including ours, talk about humanities and sciences in an integrated way. But I think at Ahmedabad, it's important to clarify, it's not a program. It's not a Bachelor of Arts in liberal arts. It's actually an approach, a conceptual approach, which says that yes, students need depth and specialization, even super specialization, but they also need a breadth of perspective. We believe very strongly that very few problems that we face today can be resolved by the study of one discipline. And so over the last so many years, we have actually been investing in schools. We have a school of management, humanities and sciences, computer studies, and engineering and applied science. We also built 4 centers. And these are centers which, according to us, represent some of the futuristic trends that education will need to deal with.
Sorry.
I'll go back to that. Yeah. So the centers are in environment and energy. We have Venture Studio, which is a startup incubator and actually provides mentorship and guidance to those who are interested in going into building their own enterprise. We see this trend a lot. I thought it was a lot to do with Gujarat and the fact that it is an entrepreneurial community. But across India, we can see youngsters stepping forward and saying, I want to go into organic farming. I actually want to launch a tech startup. And so Venture Studio is connected to angel investors and provides mentorship and guidance to young entrepreneurs. Yes, if their project goes through screening, they can also get funding from Venture Studio, and typically for a very small equity stake because our DNA is purely education. We have the Center for Learning Futures, and I would invite some of you to come and visit it because the Center for Learning Futures looks at pedagogies and education of the future. So again, looking towards how we can move towards project-based learning, but in different ways, in different contexts, is what CLEF does. And finally, we have a Center for Heritage Management, which looks at, which actually runs a master's program in heritage management. So all of these have given us the base for what we think is one of the most important experiments in education at our institution, at our university. What we've now looked at and what our students are engaging with is the real issues that they will face in their future through a truly interdisciplinary model. In fact, we see it as beyond interdisciplinary into what we think of as transdisciplinary now. So we've identified 4 themes this year around the areas of water, climate change, justice and democracy, and neighborhoods. Through each of these themes, for each of these themes, each and every first-year student goes through what we call a studio course, short 1-month courses that have been put together by 50 faculty across disciplines. Now, I think this is an important development, so I'm going to take a minute or so on this. Clearly, issues around water are not going to be solved by study of biology or chemistry or just H2O. It's about psychology. It's about how each one of us need to make the shift towards saving water, how we each need to make sure we recycle water, save every drop. It's definitely also about political studies, political science. We've all heard water wars are going to be the next wars and so on and so forth. So the program on water has actually been put together by faculty who have studied across the world and come together to create an integrated program that helps students deal with water, go out into society and understand what are the challenges involved, and then hopefully in some way begin thinking about solutions around water. The same stands for climate change, justice and democracy, neighborhoods. So perhaps the maximum innovation that we are doing as a university is around curriculum. And I'm sure you'll all know how students react when they come out of school. They want to roll up their sleeves and get to work on the real world. So for us, it's really about how can we start the process of their engaging with the real world. These foundation programs were to us the most futuristic way that we could actually get going on this. As we speak, 960 students across the university, different disciplines, are actually engaged in these foundation programs. We hear that they are enjoying them. More importantly, they may lead to an interesting and rich experience at university. So it's our belief that if every class is populated by people who are very similar to each other, it's going to be a boring class. So we're really about those many voices coming together on a relatively large campus, and through those voices for each student to discover their own identity. just wanted to share the fact that this curriculum is probably our most ambitious attempt at interdisciplinarity. Our students could always take courses from across the university. They could always, evolve and experiment. But here we think we've taken it to another level where we've actually contextualized the learning and taken it beyond the boundaries of any subject. That's what I wanted to share. Kapil.
Thanks, Ansha. So I'll talk a bit about what Bennett University is up to, and a lot of what we do is dependent on technology. So the first thing was, some of these could be actually improvisations rather than innovations, but this year we used data very extensively to get insights into what we were doing in terms of reaching out to students, the way we were communicating with them, the way we were getting the feedback. So that was one thing. Second thing that we introduced for our School of Media was, we were struggling with students' language skills. And for our media program, language is the most critical factor. And this year we were also launching an industry-first Hindi program, journalism and mass communication program in Hindi. So we said we need to know the language skills because we can't, at the undergrad level, we can't begin to teach them language. We can't really get into their grammar and punctuation and vocabulary and sentence formation. So we wanted to lay that to rest. So, and we said we don't want to have access issues because we'll have students from across the country School of Media particularly, anywhere. I mean, BA Journalism and Mass Comm is usually a second choice degree. The primary would be a literature or a mainstream degree, and people look at media degrees as the second choice. So we said we don't want to make it too difficult for the students to take the test. So we had a video proctored test. So imagine a scenario, you're getting up from your bed, walk up to your breakfast table, and open your laptop, and you have a video proctor sitting right in front of you. There's a small video window in which you can see the proctor, and then you're appearing for the test. You move your eyes to the left, there's a prompt that you can't really move around too much. You try to toggle the window, there's a prompt. You fool around too much, 3 warnings, and then the system shuts down. Your test is kind of exited. So that kind of thing. So that's where we were trying to innovate and see if there are easier methods, more cost-effective methods, which are which help the university as well as the student. Then there are a lot of artificial intelligence based projects in the university. In case some of you were in the previous session with me in the morning, you may have seen this particular point. But Bennett University decided to take the lead in the AI and robotics space. Going forward, give us another 5 years, and the entire, regular thinking work will go to AI, and a lot of physical world will actually move to robotics. So these are actually the real waves that we'll contend in 5 to 10 years' time. So we are doing a lot of work in artificial intelligence. I pointed out some of these in red, because we are using a lot of enormous amount of data to churn and get insights into predicting student performance when they are on campus. We're trying to get some enrollment decisions, but then the data that we require is difficult to get. There is a lecture video analysis, so we capture all the lectures. All our 200 plus seaters lecture halls are actually video captured. And then we are trying to use facial recognition to look at class participation. On how, so we see some people who are bored, we see some people with their eyes closed, we see some people participating, some enthusiastic, some nodding their heads. So the camera captures all. And based on that, the camera, based on the facial recognition, the camera is trying to identify your participation in the classroom. So it's no longer just about the marks that you score, no longer just about the assignments that you submit, but a lot of analysis, 360-degree analysis about your participation in the class. Then we are looking at feature-based opinion mining on student feedback. So students would give a lot of feedback, a lot of times under duress, a lot of times under pressure from faculty members. They don't want to rub the faculty members the wrong way, but then there are insights available based on the data that they submit, based on which you can draw real insights into what the student really wanted to tell you about the faculty member. And then there are many exciting interdisciplinary research projects. And like I said, Hatchery is where I want to spend a bit of time, because Bennett Hatchery is where it all comes together. So Hatchery is actually our business incubation center. And Hatchery came about before any other school did. So Hatchery came first, then School of Engineering, then rest of them. And Hatchery is a place where we believe all the students come together, all the disciplines come together, all their thinking, ideology, all their aspirations come together. So we call it the capstone for self-expression, innovation, and the multidisciplinary project-based learning. So Clay, if you can go to the next slide.
Yes.
So just to give you some examples of the kind of projects that happen at Hatchery. Of course, I mean, technology is the underlying resource for all of them. But we've had, I mean, and these are just some of them. We are working on 50 odd startups right now. There are more than 300 students who are engaging with Hatchery. Entrepreneurship courses, 2 entrepreneurship courses are a mandatory part of the curriculum of every single program. So even if you're a law student, you go through at least those 2 courses in entrepreneurship. So in technology, we've had one application called InstaDep, which a student kind of created. It's a blockchain-based application. Now I'll tell you the problem with these startups and the students who are founding these. So this guy is Samyak Jain is just completed second year. Founded this InstaDep, got a $2 million funding. He's now looking to drop out and move to San Francisco. His team has already moved. So it's a challenge. I mean, if you make them succeed too quickly within the first year or 2, then there's always a risk of dropping out. Another guy, he created a cloud-based investment app, Savat. His entire contact center and customer service center is based in Hyderabad. He dropped out of Bennett to go to Hyderabad. He said, I need to be closer to where my customers are being served. So that's another challenge, but these are the 2 startups that were incubated. In social entrepreneurship, we have somebody creating an Uber of ambulances because had an experience with ambulances and access and everything. So he's creating an Uber of ambulances and making access to ambulances and critical early medical care available. Then there is another project which is around e-commerce portal for local artisans. So even if you have Amazons and the Flipkarts of the world, there are still intermediaries. There are stores which are sourcing their stuff from the local artisans and then selling them with a markup. Ultimately, the margins are still going to the intermediary. So this, it's a girl who's working on this project, and she's kind of trying to connect all the local artisans and putting them on a direct-to-customer kind of a e-commerce platform. Then solutions for space travel. There is this student who's filed an Indian patent already, and he's trying to make the lives easier for astronauts. When they are in space, spending days after days in a vacuum-controlled cubicle, he's trying to make their lives easier and trying to kind of make it more livable. Travel plus education. So there's one student working on business immersion plus education plus travel. So a comprehensive experience in multiple countries. And he's kind of selling these packages to us. He started with South Asia to begin with. Then one student got really upset about the firecrackers on 4th of July, Independence Day. So he's trying to create a drone-based simulation to simulate firecrackers and the effect of firecrackers and to improvise upon it so that he can control the pollution and all that the burning of firecrackers comes with. Biofuel, using crop stubble. I mean, it's like, I mean, this is happening at many levels. Mahindra is working on it. There are many companies working on it. But coming from a student, this kind of a thought, I mean, we really loved it. And even chocolate box. So this is a girl who sold, 7 lakh rupees worth of chocolates to TCL sitting on Bennett University campus. She set up this company. And last Diwali, she created these gift hampers and had a B2B order of about 7 lakhs. So many such examples. In fact, reminds me of one particular girl, Ria. So this is about a year and a half ago. I just joined Bennett University, and I mean, like any other startup university, Kachi would know. I mean, we work till late. We know when to come to university. We don't know when to go back from the university. So this is around 8:39, and I was floating around the campus, and I just saw one dark room which had loud music, and then Ria was standing there. I'm like, what are you doing at this point of time? Because she was not allowed into the academic block at that point of time. And she said, "No, I've taken permission, and I've created this makeshift discotheque." I said, "Why did you do that?" She said, "This is part of a project called 50 Rupee Entrepreneur." So it's a course. It's called 50 Rupee Entrepreneur. The objective is you can invest only rupees 50, and then you have to maximize the return. And I'll tell you the kind of lessons this entire course built in. So this girl got fairy lights from her friends, laptop her own, borrowed speakers from friends. She said, 0 rupee investment. I had 17 people dancing here, 10 rupees per entry, 170 rupees already. And she said, everybody's gone for dinner right now. 10 more will come back. I'll have another 100. So with a 0 rupee investment, I'll have 270 by end of the day. I got curious and I started finding what are others doing. So somebody was selling flower pots. Then the next day, I saw so many faculty members having those chota flower pots, 20 rupees, 30 rupees flower pots floating around. One enterprising guy actually, so next to the tuck shop, we saw this poster. This poster was selling, I didn't understand it to begin with, but it was selling some logins for 10 rupees each. And then we dug deeper, we realized this guy was actually selling logins for a virtual private network to bypass the university's internet system. So university's internet system is controlled. I mean, it's like there are many restrictions. So he bypassed all the restrictions. He was selling logins for 10 rupees each. And then we had to reach out to this guy and give him some lessons in legality of the business. I mean, business is one thing, but legality of the business is another thing. And then lessons in ethics and morality of the entire thing. So that's where we realized just a small course which cuts across the legality of business, morality of business, investments, how do you optimize on investments, how do you optimize on efforts, how do you count on your friends and make those small teams to help you when you want to set up. So within a small course for just about half a semester, half a credit course, had all these things built in. And that's the kind of innovative and approaches that universities have these days. Yeah?
Thank you.
Kanji.
Kanji.
Hi, thanks. So I think that was my elevator speech, but it's right here. That's fine, that's fine. It's perfectly fine. Now I'll go back to it for a minute. I'll briefly touch upon that. I did speak about the interwoven learning where I said we reaffirm. So what Kriya's done is that it's, it's pioneering something known as interwoven learning, which really means that whatever major you do at Kriya, whether it is physics or whether it is arts and literature or whether it is history, each one of them will have a certain set of elements, like they will be writing intensive, they will be research based, they will be interdisciplinary, they will talk about historicity, which is how did the ideas evolve, they will talk about the unanswered questions, they will have ethics, the ethical questions posed during the classes, and so on and so forth. So there are about 8 or 9 of these guiding principles, and every faculty member who joins Kriya is given that as a guiding principle and said, now you design your course or your curriculum so that at least, whichever class the students are in, they come out with a set of common qualities which a Kriya student should stand for. And that's our long vision for our students, right? So if we could go to the next one. So when we were designing, and the very first, I remember the first few, the garage kind of conversations that we were having, we were really designing the admissions process, and there were some thoughts that were floating around, like it had to be contemporary. It had to talk to the current student mindset. It couldn't be something archaic or something that was done earlier before. In fact, I remember one of our leaders said, why don't we have just a tweet? Let people just send in a tweet, that many characters, and that's it. And let's just assess people and then call them for more immersion. But, of course, we got into what does UGC expect of us and what do students and whether there'll be, RTIs on that. So we had to let go of that. But definitely we thought it should be light on data collection. We are not going to irritate students or annoy them by asking too many details up front, right? But really ask for things that we value or that we really want to know about the student. So, it had to be consistent, scalable, and of course, since we were looking at so many qualitative things, it should be quantifiable. We should be able to convert those qualitative skills or whatever assessments to very quantifiable rubric, metric, which will have a log score so that we can make the choice of whether we want to make the offer of admission or not. So, also, like I said, starting from the end, looking at what is the long vision for our students, what should they come out with, what are the values that we really want to instill, what are the values then that the 17-year-old should come in with? Because if we are saying we want to create ethical leaders, then what would that ethical leader need to be at 17 to be able to become one? Because Kriya can value add, but Kriya can't build them from scratch, right? They're 17, 18-year-olds. So to build an ethical leader, they should definitely have a sense of integrity. So we were not looking at ethics, but we were looking at integrity when we are assessing them. If we wanted them to be, very dynamic and agile, then we really wanted them to be comfortable with uncertainty. Not be rigid, not be closed, open-minded, curious. So those were the kind of things we were looking at. And also, how did that all tie back with the design of the experience that they're going to get at Kriya? So what does potential mean for us? And how did that potential tie back with the Kriya ethos and the Kriya values? So when we were looking at those, there was a lot of numbers, skills thrown around, and everyone agreed that we want them to be definitely curious, empathetic people who were good collaborative workers and who thought creatively, who were, problem solvers and could look at problems or could look at cases from multiple perspectives. And of course, be open-minded. So the actual design that ended up being, it was definitely going to be us building a class. Because we didn't want to evaluate everyone on the same parameters. We wanted to pick students so that for their own uniqueness, so that when they come together, we build a class which can sort of add to each other's learning, and not that each one of them is being picked up for the same skills, like we see in the national curriculum. So if you're applying to an engineering school, everyone has to be good at physics, chemistry, and maths, and has to meet that particular cutoff, right? But here at Kriya, we are choosing people for a different reason. Each student is chosen for a different reason. Each student looks different from the others. So we're really building a class and not picking everyone with the same or similar skills and qualities. So we work on a selection mindset, which means we are not looking to reject people, we are looking to engage with them. If we see the slightest of reason that this could be an amazing kid, it could come from their extracurriculars, it could come from their personal story, it could come from their academics, we'll call them. And then, of course, we decided we would be absolutely need blind. We would back that need blind admissions with a very strong financial aid program. So what we did actually end up making was an amazing admissions process, and everyone who went through it, and 60% of the applications went through it, we ended up choosing only 20% of them, but all 60 of them wrote back to us saying that this was a fantastic experience, and we really learned while we were there. So we took in their personal story, briefly their academics, curricular activities, and their personal details, of course. And on the basis of that, we shortlisted them. There were some applications which really stood out, saying these were not kids who would be very happy learning in the way that Kriya had designed the learning experience. They were probably not very open to interdisciplinary learning. And so we had to let go of, say, about 40% of the applications there. But definitely the others deserved another look. So we called them for the second, which is an offline part of it, and which held much more weightage than the first one, and that was the Immersion Day. So we would invite all students to come to, say, a central place in Delhi, and we conducted this around 7 cities, so whether it's Delhi, Mumbai, Bangalore, Chennai, and so many other cities. We would call them, invite them to a common place. We would take them out on a field trip. Now, this immersion was led by faculty. And our faculty come from across the world, from the Yales and the Harvards and Columbia and Oxford and all the better universities of the world. And these people would take them out on a field trip. The students would be exposed to, some case which was maybe historical or economic or maybe, political or even science-related location. It could be just a marketplace. It could be the Connaught Place in Delhi. It could be the Snake Park in Chennai. It could be the Salarjung Museum in Hyderabad. So different places where the faculty would write a case study, which was more or less open-ended, introduce the students to the case, let them be there for an hour or so, ask questions, meet people over there, and the students come back and write a story. They write an essay. So it's a reflective essay about what they have observed. After that, they get into groups. There's a group activity. They present the case. They then followed by a personal interview. So it's a whole day of immersion. And even though we've taken academics in the first part, in the online part, academics is not just picked up there. Academics is also picked up by how they engage with the case. So it's 18 data points collected over a two-step process. And these data points, whether they're qualitative or quantitative to begin with, they're all converted into a log score. And that log score has to add up to our internal benchmark. And it's only then that we decide whether, this person would be a good fit at Kriya or not. But whatever it did, the whole case, the immersion, I think was something very exciting for the students, and they were very appreciative of the whole process. Thanks.
Great, thank you, Kanji. And we're going to now have an open discussion. I do want to acknowledge that even though we took different areas, the curriculum, student experience, and the selection process, where we've seen innovation and ingenuity occur across these universities, each were also making links to those other places. And so I'd like to ask if any questions for our last 10 minutes of the session.
So quick one to Priya. And understanding the fact that, first of all, should appreciate the way that you have redesigned, innovated the selection process itself. But, it's just the beginning. And when it begins, all of us, whether we are schools or colleges or universities, we go overboard in our efforts, right? And once 5 years down the line, when Kriya is a name, Kriya is promoting itself, it's a name amongst quite a few schools now, so we're talking about that. Suddenly there are like 15,000 applications, there are like 25,000 applications. It will so happen. India is a place where this happens like this. 5 years down the line, you will have like 150,000 applications.
Correct.
Would you be able to do this again? I mean, and how do you look at it futuristically?
So that is something that we are debating a lot these days and we are discussing. But from our initial conversations, and before that I'll tell you that we are setting up a media lab at Kriya, which is going to create, we've tied up with a US organization. We are creating virtual reality modules for students to study in their foundation course. So we are a liberal arts university. We have a foundation year where they're introduced to multiple disciplines. We've brought in the virtual reality element there. So we are thinking that at least for the next 3 or 4 years, like you said, we'll continue with the KIC model. It's called the Kriya Immersive Case. And then the KIC maybe will take the online avatar where we have it in virtual reality. So once we have that, we may lose some of the elements of students engaging with real people on ground, but then I think we have a fantastic media team. It's been led by Professor Hariharan, who's a much acclaimed filmmaker, and they're already started to make these modules, and we're also going to train the students to create these modules. So we think that with so many minds on campus creating these modules, we will be able to put together cases which are as rigorous as these actual KICs.
Okay, so yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. So first of all, आपके मुंह में घी शक्कर. If Kanji reaches 150,000 applications in 5 years, she'll treat all of us. Yeah, she'll give us a party in Grand Hyatt itself, right? Yeah, and I'll just share my experience with this particular thing. So when I was at Shivnadar, I joined in 2012. So from 12 to 15, we continued a process which had an interview. So we had our own assessment. So boards, assessment, interview. 2015, when we actually were traveling for interviews, we realized we could not scale beyond that point of, beyond that. So we were like 35 people, faculty team, traveling to 7 cities in 11 days' time, conducting 1,100 interviews in one round. It was crazy. And we realized it was impossible after that. So what we did was we replaced the interview. We got all the faculty members in one room after the session, and faculty was losing on their research time and vacation and everything. We got all of them in a room. We said, okay, we are okay to eliminate interviews, but we need a replacement for interviews. And that's how we designed 1 extra hour of standardized assessment. What we did was we compiled all the questions the faculty members would ask in that interview. Based on that, we created a template for each of the kind of assessments that we had. And we just replicated that assessment to 10 times to create the pool. And the process, which was 2 hours test plus interview, became a 3-hour test. 2-hour test plus 1-hour test. You could give the entire test in one setting. And what that allowed us was, we also created multiple iterations of the test depending on the program. So for example, for a sociology program, it turned out to, the 3rd hour became 2 essays. For a BTech program, it became physics and mathematics, but detailed physics and mathematics. And we got great results out of that. I mean, in terms of scalability, in terms of access to students, in terms of the way we could handle the results, remove intercodal reliability. I mean, two interviewers interviewing the candidate and having a different opinion about the candidate. So all that got standardized. So give or take some benefits on either side, the entire thing worked. So you have to improvise to kind of scale it up.
I'm going to add to that because it's actually something that we as universities discuss a lot, and you've really picked up on something which is very close, very close to our hearts, right? So we have a personal interaction. We all follow different models, but I think the intent is to understand individuals. And last year, for example, we've conducted interactions with almost 60% of those who applied. It's a logistical nightmare. 94 faculty, different rooms, different timings, etc., etc. But you see, and this is where I think perhaps Kanji and I are a little bit on the same page. There is no substitute or no perfect substitute for understanding these youngsters. We have applications from multiple boards. Can I look at academics? I can't look at only academics. Somebody who studied CBSE versus Gujarat board versus IB, their marks don't tell the full story. So the whole point is, and we debated this, but we said we will stay with a personal component for sure. What form it will take, I don't know. We will evolve and change. Where our numbers are already quite high. Like I said, we admitted 960 students. So just that number, and you can imagine how it explodes. The point is, it is doable. The models may change. We may tweak. But at least the intent, and all universities are saying this, is how do we understand each person as an individual rather than just a mark, just a score, etc. I do want to say that for engineering, the NTA score now is in 7 decimal places, right? So you have 99.7373734, and you have 99.7373733. How do you differentiate unless you have some human connect with these kids? So subject very close to our heart.
No, I really agree with that because, and liberal arts universities, maybe Bennett can still think of it being a technology-driven and technology-based programs. But for a liberal arts university, one, the classrooms will not go beyond 1:25. One is that. The second is we are absolutely committed to the personal getting better inputs on a personal level before we admit students, because it's a very unique and a very different kind of a program. We'll never have the kind of numbers that we're looking at. So maybe on our shortlisting stage, we'll be more efficient and maybe not call as many students. But those whom we call will have a face-to-face interaction, always.
Okay. Other questions?
That was the only, I don't want to answer on that, but the point is
Too many
the whole
answers.
shortlisting, I just fear should not again go back to the same fact. That's the only...
Not rejection, but selection.
I think, we are worried about that too.
We're very committed.
We are very committed.
How do we stay the course?
Okay, so I have a different question altogether. It's regarding the courses. I think Ahmedabad University talked about learning ventures, where you talked about pedagogy and all of that. Is there any probability of having teacher education courses? Because I think that's a very important area that we teachers face today.
No worries. So the Center for Learning Futures, we've now started a Faculty Connect program. So one of the challenges we face is that the curriculum at schools is sometimes very, very different to the curriculum at universities. And so we are encouraging teachers to actually have conversations with our faculty and see, all right, in physics, this is what we're teaching right now, or in math, this is what we're teaching, and this is what they can expect as they come in the first few months to university. So based on those conversations, we're finding schools extremely responsive to actually seeing, can we bridge this communication gap between school and university? And then we've set up at CLEF, we have actually created courses in communication, in math, And we ensure that people who may have studied something different in their curriculum in school are brought up to speed in terms of what their program demands of them. So 2 initiatives, one with teachers, and we do invite you, please, connect with us to be able to set up these conversations with our faculty. The other thing that we do is for students to help them bridge the course. So many students, are confused when they enter university, they're confused also while choosing their streams. So they dropped math. Can they still study accountancy, economics? Our default answer is yes, yes. So the whole university functions on default answer, yes. How do we make it happen?
And just in these yeah.
Because those who have made a mistake due to lack of proper counseling in the past, they should not suffer.
Not at all. Even CREA offers all courses.
Yeah.
Humanities students can move into science, take up science majors, and science majors can take up any math. There are no prerequisites for anything.
In fact, just before enrolling grade 11 and 11 students, we are changing their streams because they are requesting us to do it. Just 2-3 days before we are supposed to.
They're too young to know. And they're not
We are allowing that.
And you must, because the whole point, and I started with 3 idiots, is we must break that, excuse the language, but that goddamn system. And between all of us, we really can.
So one quick one. Is NIOS an acceptable?
Yes.
It is.
That should
It is. It is. And we have, even in this year, a few, but exceptional students who went through the NIOS. And it would not happen. It would not happen unless we met them.
I hope we can continue this conversation into
I'm
the break
included
so that
tonight.
Ganesh doesn't chide me later about eating into the break. But I want to thank our panelists. So let's give a round of applause.
Thank you.
I really enjoyed
Thank
it.
you.
We'll continue the conversation into the break, but I hope, again, that you might be able to come to Delhi for our Alliance Forum event, which will be October 14th. And this is exactly the kind of conversations that we facilitate there. But we actually give 75 or 90 minutes and not the 60 minutes, so to give more time. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.